hallucinations, 4:30. They were never late, those demons. They come 4:30. And unless I can have another drink, there was no peace. And I messed up my own business that way. Eventually I had to stop because I couldn't even pay the rent there in Chester House. And I'm like, I have to get to my place of worship. I need God because the devil is after me. And I really struggled to shower and to, I've had 50 something jobs and I'm 50 something years old. And I get to church and it's closed. And I thought the end of the world had come. But what had actually happened is that it was Thursday. I had drank the first drink on Saturday. It was now Thursday. But from then started what I call my 7 years of madness. Because after that, I was always terrified of big buildings, like NSSF building, wanted to fall on me in particular. And the only solution is I have to stop completely. That scared the living daylights out of me. I could not imagine life without alcohol. He told me it's time to involve your parents. I said I can't. That's a deal breaker. I can't. They don't know I drink. They don't drink. They're very good Christians. They don't drink at all. How will they react if I tell them that their daughter is an alcoholic?
We've seen people who've lost their lives because of addiction. People who've lost opportunities because of addiction. People have even lost their jobs because of addiction. The Addiction Channel is a YouTube channel whereby we share our stories on addiction, recoveries, testimonies on how addiction has affected most of the people in this world. Statistics says it, at least in every 4 families, 1 family is a victim of addiction. Remember, addiction is a fatal and cunning disease. I am your host, Joseph Wambua, and with me is Brenda. Welcome, Brenda.
Thank you very much.
Who is Brenda?
Brenda is a recovering alcoholic, somebody who went through addiction and by the grace of God got out of it. Brenda is also now an addiction counselor and helps other people to get into recovery. And she's also an artist.
Wow. Brenda, how did you get about your addiction? How did you start? What happened? What happened, Brenda?
Where my addiction started, from where I stand right now, I would say that there were very many underlying or predisposing factors that, the stage was kind of set for it to happen. So I'll say that I grew up in a very good family. My parents were very good providers, very loving parents. They gave us absolutely everything that a child needs to grow up. I grew up in Nairobi, in Kileleshwa. My father was a lecturer. My mother worked from income tax, and I can't say I ever lacked anything in life that a child needs to grow up healthy, to grow up, well turned out. But for whatever reason, we were 4 children, and for whatever reason, I used to feel as though I'm not good enough, I'm not loved, I'm rejected. I had a lot of negative I remember this right from age 3. I was always crying and, why are you crying? Oh, the chair hit my leg. Oh, the bed hit my leg. But it was never any of that. It was always that I'm feeling out of place. I'm feeling I'm not wanted or something of this sort. Where I stand right now, I could say that, even physiologically, perhaps I was lacking some chemicals in my brain or something of that sort. Sometimes you have deficits, right? You have too much cortisol or something of that sort that makes you. We never knew those things. Nevertheless, I grew up, pretty much like every child. I went to good schools. I went to St. George's. I went to Kenya High. I had good teachers, good environment to live in and everything to grow up in. And everything was all right. When I finished school, for some reason, I did not want to go the way most people went. I did not want to go to the university and I don't know, and all that kind of stuff. I didn't see the point. And so I just started working. And unfortunately, in those days, you could get a job. I got a job with KCB out of school, 6 months out of Form 6. Went to Mombasa, was doing pretty good, but I was bored because I hated the bank. My dad got me the job at the bank, being the loving father that he is, because he could see if I have refused to go to the university, then I should quickly get into the kind of career where I can make money and where I can have security. I guess that's the way he saw it. Me, I saw boredom because I hate maths. So I hated the bank. I absolutely hated the bank. I wanted to do something, I'm artistic. I wanted to do something artistic, or I wanted to do tours and travel. I wanted to fly, or I wanted media. I wanted to be a broadcaster. I have the voice, right?
Yeah, true.
Something of that sort. But he was thinking more about safety, about, prosperity and all of that. So I went to the bank because Daddy said so. But in a very short time, I was bored. I was always complaining to my big sister who was living in Germany. And later on, she came back to Kenya and she convinced me to leave the bank, leave Mombasa. The bank was in Mombasa. Come back to Nairobi. Come learn administration because I already knew French and German. And maybe you get a job in the UN and, you do good. So that's what I did. So I came and learned administration at Valley Business School. And she got me a job where she was working in a German company. And in a year, I was bored.
While in Germany?
We were here.
In Kenya, okay.
Yes. I was bored. And I thought to myself, and I was even getting depressed. Although in my time, the word depressed, you hardly ever used it, right? We never used to recognize things like depression. So I thought to myself, I'm bored. The bank was Daddy's thing. This is Helen's thing, my sister's thing. What about my thing? What about what I want? But what did I want? And who was I? I was having difficulty really knowing who am I because I was so used to walking under somebody's shadow. I'm always walking under my sister's shadow. I'm a puppet on a string for somebody else. So I set out to find myself. What a journey looking for yourself. Yeah. Where would you look for yourself if you didn't know where you were? I looked for myself in the arts. There was somebody who was advertising for actors. There was a school, a college that came up. It was called Nairobi Theatre Academy, where you could learn to be a singer, a dancer, an actress, all of that. And I went in an audition, I got in, and I started to do plays. I had a full-time job still. I used to do plays and I was happy. I was finally so happy. When I was on stage, I was at home, When I can express myself through the arts, I was totally at home. Eventually, I found my way into the fashion industry. The fashion industry is so glamorous, and I must say that I am also addicted to excitement and glamour and glitter. If something shines, I like it. Like this bottle of water, I like it because it's glittering, And I was very happy doing that as well. In that industry, I met and fell in love with vodka. Vodka. Now, I had tasted alcohol before. I didn't think much of it. Many times, like at the bank, in a setup where end of year party, we are all given champagne because wow, we've done, really good job. We've made profit. Everybody champagne. My thought was always, I don't like this thing that is making me feel dizzy, and I wouldn't drink much of it. I would much rather drink Coke. When I went into the showbiz, when I went into fashion, there was this particular fashion show that was sponsored by vodka, and everybody would drink it. It was as much as this water is here. Eventually, I started to drink it, and as I said before, already the stage had been set.
Yeah.
Emotionally, there was that. I was an insecure person. I was somebody who had a very low self-esteem, although you wouldn't know, because I know how to disguise it with arrogance and in other ways. I was somebody who never had a very strong sense of who I am. Yeah. So there was that emotionally. There was somebody who was prone to be depressed. It doesn't take much for me to, go down and be depressed and feel the world is coming to an end. So the only catalyst that was missing was the alcohol itself. And also by this time I had come to realize maybe I made mistakes like not really going into a serious career, because by now it was catching up with me that I was in my late 20s, early 30s. Other people have now finished campus, are doing their masters, they have that. Or they went and got married and have children, they have families. Or some other thing that makes them somebody in life. And somehow in the process of me going here and there, kind of I was feeling like I am nobody, I am nothing, I have nothing. Can I say that I was working and therefore I have now built a house, or I now own my house or something? Zero. None of that was happening. So there was that also. So when I started, so there was that always feeling of not being good enough coming back. And now it's not just a notion, it's kind of real, that it's being thrown in your face. You, what have you been doing? You, who are you, and whatever. So when I drank, anytime I drank vodka, that feeling was not there. When I drank vodka, I was on top of the world. When I drank vodka, I was somebody. I could delude myself into thinking everything is just fine and it's going to be just fine. Now, in showbiz, I could have then become somebody, I could have become somebody following those lines. Unfortunately, what happened is that, as the psychologists say, some people have something called an X factor, which I also have. And that X factor now means that when I drink, I can't stop. And I cannot control how much I'm going to drink. I can say I'm only going to have this one. And tomorrow morning I won't understand what happened. All I'll know is that all the alcohol is finished and I'm a mess, and I don't know, that one drank a whole crate. So that started to mess me up. Because even within that industry, even though I had talent, even though I was among the best of the best, if I'm to mention them, at that particular time, they're really the best of the industry. People I used to see in magazines even when I was a child. I was working under them. But the drinking now just started catching up with me. And I couldn't see that I had a problem, because people would start to say, why drinking so much? Why drinking vodka? Vodka is not for women, And I couldn't see that I have a problem, because I wouldn't get drunk, and I wouldn't mess, and I wouldn't fight, and I wouldn't do those things that people do which make drinking bad. And I would wonder, why are you complaining and I'm the one who's going to drive all of you home when you're all blacked out, So I didn't know that that is called tolerance. I didn't know that that is bad. If you can drink that much and not get drunk, then that is not a good thing. That is a bad thing. It means that my body does not process alcohol naturally, in a natural way. A natural body would know this is poison and you throw up. For me, I would be thinking, okay, vodka's boring. What's next? That's going to give me a bigger high. And for sure, eventually, vodka just wouldn't do it for me. I mean, I would have bottles of vodka at home and I'd drink the vodka, and at some point I would stop and I'd go into the Kijiji and get some of those things that don't have names, that people, that are illegal, because they get you high so fast.
Changa.
I guess it was Changa, although it was bottled up. Kienyeji Gold. Yeah. Eventually, towards the end, that is what I used to drink, Kienyeji Gold. And even the person who is selling it would assume I'm buying it for somebody else. He didn't know. And the moment he got the notion that I was buying it for myself, oh, mommy, you see Konya here, And I would lie, So I started becoming like, oh, it's for Buana. And they would believe it, because I'm living in a very beautiful flat, very expensive flat, but I'm in the Kijiji, so probably I'm a kept woman, so that's what they used to think. So he's complaining about one. I need 4. I need a liter a day. That's what I would need. I would need to drink the one he's giving me now. It would go like a glass of water, and then I would need another 2. And in the morning, I'd be shaky. And
Tremors in the morning?
Yep. Hallucinations. 4:30. They were never late, those demons. They come 4:30. And unless I can have another drink, there was no peace. And I would just be in agony, just looking at the clock. When will 6 o'clock reach? So that I can go back into the Kijiji and get another drink. So that I can, stop shaking, stop seeing, well, they're hallucinations, but what I would call demons. Probably shower, eat, maybe show up at work. But then I was working for myself. Really, I've had some of the best opportunities. I had an office in Chester House. I started running my own modeling agency. I shared the office with a media company. And so, the two went very, very well. But sometimes I just wouldn't show up for work, for my own work. I wouldn't show up for myself because I would prefer to drink. After having that one shot, I might just continue and not show up for work. And meanwhile, there's a shoot somewhere, or maybe I'd advertised for models and they've shown up, they're ready to register, but I'm nowhere to be seen. Or I'd show up, but when it reaches 3, I start craving. So either I'd go across to the petrol station and, to the little shop there and get a beer or something and steady up. Or my mind would tell me, why am I buying a small can for 200 where I could get, I don't know how many sachets of, whiskey for this. And I would go all the way somewhere along University where I was staying in State House. I'd buy of course I won't come back to the office. I'll go home and, continue drinking, and I might drink for a couple of days. And I messed up my own business that way. Eventually I had to stop because I couldn't even pay the rent there in Chester House. And that was another major rock bottom,
Yeah. And Brenda, you're saying even the one who was selling you the liquor at the ghetto advised you not to drink, but you decided not to. You have to continue the drink.
I had to. I didn't have a choice. I felt I didn't have a choice. I had to have it. I couldn't operate without it. It's like somebody suddenly telling you don't have oxygen.
And then when you start drinking, you can't stop drinking.
I couldn't stop. I remember one situation where I had stayed stopped for quite a number of weeks. And I was working again. I was working in a tour company. I was a manager. Remember, that's what I had wanted when I was a kid. I wanted tours and travel. And here it was, I got an opportunity to manage a tour and travel company. And I remember one Saturday coming from work, and I was so stressed. I was just feeling so stressed and depressed and whatever. And usually when I feel like that, I go to Ngong. I would just hop on a bus. It used to be 111. It would go all the way to Ngong town. I might get off and eat something or something, and then I take a 126 and come back. The hills just used to give me peace. So I did that, but by the time I came back, I wasn't feeling any better. So I went into that same Kijiji, and I told myself I will only have one. And I did have a lot of money, but I only bought one. And I came back with it. I remember it went down pretty fast, and I remember that I did send out. There was a groundsman in the flat where I lived, and I told him, would you go and get me, I don't know, another 3, something of that sort, which he did. It was a Saturday afternoon. When I woke up, I was feeling terrible. I was so sick, and I was, feeling, and then I go into terror. And I don't know what I'm afraid of. And I'm like, I have to get to my place of worship. I need God because the devil is after me. And I really struggled to shower and to, and I remember going to the kiosk, and I needed, a soda or something to keep me going. And they're like, you look terrible. I'm like, I'm sick. Oh, you're sick? Well, where are you going if you're sick? I'm like, to church. I'm like, yeah. So I struggle, I go, and I get to church, and it's closed. And I thought the end of the world had come. But what had actually happened is that it was Thursday. I had drank the first drink on Saturday. It was now Thursday. And I don't know what happened to Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I don't know what happened to those days. When I came back to the house, that's when I realized there's just so much, many bottles, many bottles all over, all drank. They used to come in fours and they used to be in a black paper bag. I drank all of them, some under the bed, somewhere. I don't remember when I was going out to get these things. Was I going out or was I sending out? Blackout. I'd reached the point where I walk and I talk and I do things and I'm unconscious. I'm completely oblivious of what could have happened. And so, for example, I now walk with this, but I have no idea what happened to my hip. And nobody believes me. No doctor believes me that I don't know what happened to my hip. I got sober and my hip was kaput. And whether I fell down the stairs or whether I was hit by a car, or I have absolutely no idea what happened. So when I would start to drink, I had no control over stopping. So even though I went on that Saturday and I said only one, that was the result.
No, Brenda. Not that you're having a walking stick. You don't even remember what really happened. Maybe if you fell or what happened, you don't know. But you found that your hip is not working. Wow. And to the family, your sister had a lot of hopes in you, and she knew what you wanted to do and she supported you on that. And also your father was very responsible, taking you to good schools. Now, when you were drinking, it became uncontrollable. How was the feeling in the house?
One merciful thing is that I wasn't living in the house anymore. My parents were living in Kileleshwa. Me, I was living in this flat with my sister over in State House. And my sister was a very hard worker, so she would leave early and come late. So she was aware that I was drinking dysfunctionally, but I don't think she knew the magnitude of it. I don't think it took her quite a while to realize that I actually used to go to Kijiji and buy all sorts of illegal, those things that really, that government doesn't want people to drink. It took her a while because she used to drink wine, but she used to drink, decent wine. It would be there, and maybe after work she would have a glass or two, something of that sort. And sometimes I would drink the wine with her, like a lady supposedly, but vodka would be going into mine. You can imagine that mixture, eh? Or mine wouldn't be wine. Mine would actually be Coke and vodka, but in a wine glass. Vodka was something else inside it. So she didn't really realize. When she would see that I'm not working, that I'm living a life that's not so okay. But then every so often I'd get a gig, Every so often somebody would call me for a fashion show that would last, say, 3 months from the time you're calling the designers, hey, designers come and design, to the time you actually put this thing, the actual show would take 3 months, and I would have money during that time. Definitely after the show, I would have money. I would have free time, but I would also have money. And then maybe there'd be something music, happening, and I would go and do that. So it was just a kind of weird lifestyle, which for me was very exciting. Sometimes she would be drawn into the excitement, but being the sensible person that she is, she knew this can't go on for too long. You'd be better off having, a steady, keep this one as a hobby. You'd be better off having an 8 to 5 job that has, security, and, you're saving money and all that kind of thing. But I think me, I was in my teenage. I was 30, yeah? I was 30, and I was now in my teenage, where I want to have fun and, recklessly be reckless. And at that particular time, I was blaming people for not letting me do what I wanted to do. So our relationship became very, very bad. And this was my best sister, my favorite sister, the one who always held my hand ever since I was small. But now our relationship became very bad. I resented her. I felt, you're not giving me what I want. You are controlling me too much. You are, you don't want me to follow my dreams. That's how I saw it, really. And I blamed her a lot. So she, just like my dad was trying to say, that way is not the best way, go this way. But I was seeing that they were standing in my way. So sometimes I was self-destructive. Not sometimes. My default is actually that I'm self-destructive. But the insanity is that I actually used to imagine that when I'm self-destructing, I'm hurting them.
Oh, yeah.
So I would enjoy it. I would, I would enjoy, drinking the poison and hoping they'll die or something,
Yeah,
as it
true.
is. Yeah.
Viewers, welcome back again to the session. Brenda, now what was your turning point?
My turning point was when I contracted TB. You remember I was in the modeling the modeling showbiz world, glitter and glamour, and yes, you wouldn't find me carrying an uchumi paper bag. So it's all about image and everything. And then I discover I have TB, and to me TB was a disease for the slum. How can I have TB me? Anyway, so turns out I had TB. Ironically, I was thinking like that, and yet I'm the same person who used to go to Kijiji's looking for alcohol. And sometimes I'd eat that mutura because I'd be hungry, but I would never cook. So I couldn't believe it. Right then, around that time, I had done some business with some people. I was flying high. I was running around with some really big names, and we did some gigs, we did some work and stuff, and I don't know what went wrong, but I do know at the end of it I had no money. I just had no money, and at this point I'm diagnosed with TB, and my doctor's telling me I need 40,000 Kenya shillings, and I don't have money. And I remember when I was in his office, and he gave me the diagnosis, you have TB. And when I told him I don't have money, he said, well, you can go down to Rhodes Clinic, they'll do it for you free. And there was this great big x-ray, and he gave it to me. It's like he was giving me my disease, and he was telling me, deal with it. In that moment, Joseph, I flipped. In that moment, I literally flipped, because I'm the same person who came walking down Haile Selassie to Church House, but now I couldn't leave the building. I tried to leave the building, but all of a sudden the cars were moving too fast. There were so many matatus, so many colors. The buildings were so big, they looked like they wanted to fall on me, and I couldn't leave. I just flipped in that moment. And I don't know how long I stood there before some other group of people from inside, came, and they were going out, and I just jumped in the middle of them, and walked with them, because I was terrified of going out onto the street. I don't know what happened in that moment. And I was able to get home. But from then started what I call my 7 years of madness, because after that I was always terrified of big buildings, like NSSF building wanted to fall on me in particular. So I couldn't pass but near NSSF building, but it was the way home. So if I had to go home, I had to go via the university, round, and I was very weak indeed. You know how TB finishes somebody, yeah? So that situation really frightened me. I suffered illusions. I'd be sitting here, you are seeing a table, I am seeing a dog. So I have to take off because the dog is going to bite me. You can imagine that kind of behavior. I would see dogs a lot. And I would see giraffes. If I walk down Kenyatta Avenue, I would see giraffes. You're seeing trees, I'm seeing giraffes. Very malevolent giraffes. So I was always frightened, always terrified. All of a sudden I was scared of red buildings. And I would notice them, whereas I never noticed them before. By then, I had actually graduated as a journalist. And I remember I needed to get my pass from a certain building. Ministry of Information. When I reached there, I couldn't enter because the building is made of brick. And I would just get a panic attack, really a panic attack, until I couldn't move. and I never ever renewed it up to today, yeah, because I couldn't enter that building. Something I never had before. And I realized something is so wrong, I'm going to go completely mad. And I remember that particular time, I saw somebody who was speaking on TV, the way I saw you do the other day, and he was talking about addiction. And before then, I don't think I would have wanted to listen, because at the end of it, that the message will be don't drink, and I was not ready to stop drinking. But at this particular time, because of the situation where I was, where here I am with a killer disease called TB, and I have, I'm drinking. I've been told, eventually I went to Rhodes, they said don't drink, you cannot drink alcohol and take the TB drugs. And then I discover I cannot stop drinking either. I remember it was September 11 when I took the first dose, the Twin Towers, the very day the Twin Towers, had crashed, had been smashed. And so when I saw this person, I listened to him this time, because I realized I'm between a rock and a hard place. I can't go on drinking and I can't stop drinking. I need help. And I realized at that point I've lost control. I couldn't have called myself an addict, because an addict is the one who sleeps on the street. But I realized I've lost control. So I listened to him. I took his details, his address and everything. I was actually quarantined. My TB was that bad. Because of unmanageability, all that time that I was coughing and being sick, I'd refused to go to hospital. I just used to drink Benylin, and then it kills the symptoms and I continue. So it was really so badly gone that I was not allowed to leave the house unless I'm going to the hospital. So I never went to him immediately. I went to him after many months when I had been cleared that I can move about again. And he was in a most amazing place. What I found amazing about that place, he was a recovering alcoholic, but because he keeps a museum, it was full of bottles of alcohol, and some of them actually had alcohol inside them. I said, how can you stay near alcohol and not drink it? And he said, you'll be like that too. I will be near alcohol one day and not want to drink it, and have control not to drink it, not even the desire. And he says, yes. And he told me, keep coming here for counseling and you'll get there. He took a very small bottle like this of whatever it was, some liquor, and he put it between him and me. And he told me the difference between him and me is just that. If he's to drink this, then he will cross over to where I am. And I'm like, point being. And he said, point being, I have crossed where I can control drinking, and the only solution is I have to stop completely. That scared the living daylights out of me. I could not imagine life without alcohol. In fact, it was around 2, and so I'm already planning my drink, because at 3 o'clock I need a drink. Should I go to the supermarket? No, I might meet Esther. Should I go to the petrol station? It's expensive. Looks like I'm just going to have to go. That's a conversation going on in my mind. So that last bit where he says I can't drink anymore, he disenchanted me. I left. He told me to go there for counseling. I knew I wasn't going back, because I knew I was going to continue drinking, which I did. Continue drinking until I reached my next rock bottom, and I was so badly, I was bent. I couldn't straighten up, because I would drink the Macalli's, and I wouldn't eat. So I was like this, and my eyes were orange, and I was grey, not black now, but grey. And I remember feeling so poorly one day that I went back to him again. And he told me, you were here exactly 1 year, 2 days ago. And this time he was very tough with me. And he said, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? I said, I want to go to rehab. I'd heard of rehabs. I had visited one. It was really expensive. He told me it's time to involve your parents. I said, I can't. That's a deal breaker. I can't. They don't know I drink. They don't drink. They're very good Christians. They don't drink at all. How will they react if I tell them that their daughter is an alcoholic? It would be bad enough if I said I was drinking. And he said, but you need them so they can pay for the rehab. I said they wouldn't pay. They wouldn't waste their money like that. And so when I visited that other rehab, I had met somebody who told me, if you really, really want to, He said, Providence will provide. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it was very cryptic. But I tell you, one day somebody walked into our house, the house I lived in with my sister. She used to have a lot of people who would visit her, a lot of German people, because she worked for a German company. This guy was different. He was older. He didn't drink a lot. He was more mature. He told me, I hear horrible things about you. I hear you drink. I hear you lock yourself in your room. You won't eat. You won't work. You're rude. You're, all those kind of. But I don't see that person because I was sober the day when he came. And I told him, somehow he earned my trust. So I told him, I have a drinking problem, and when I drink, I am all those things you have heard and more. And he said, what do you want to do about it? I said, get me a job and I'll stop drinking because I'm drinking because I don't have a job. He said, no way, you can't even work. And I said, I want to go to rehab and I can't afford it. And he asked me, how much is it? I told him. He said, here. He gave me the money. I almost collapsed. I hadn't seen so much money in a very long time. And, try to imagine that a random person from Germany is one, is one who gave me the money. And so I went to rehab. I went to Asumbi in Karen when they used to take ladies. I remember I went first to see how a rehab looks like.
Which year was that?
2006, April. And I thought it was a place where there are mad people, whatever, and I just found it very serene, pretty much like this place. And they told me that I had very strong chances of recovering because I brought myself. Yeah. So I went and I sorted out the money issue, waited for space for a lady, and eventually I came in. It was the most amazing program I have ever been to. And I tell you, I've been through a lot of things. I've done Landmark Forum, I've done Franklin Covey, I've done so many things. I did so many things because I always knew there's something intrinsically wrong with me that makes me have bad relationships with people, and yet I'm not a bad person, and especially employers. I've had 50-something jobs and I'm 50-something years old, and and the problem, I never knew what the problem is. What is the problem with me and authority? Of course, now I can tell you I have daddy issues. Now that I've learned psychology, I know that because of the preconceived ideas that I have, the interjections, which are very wicked. No, they weren't wicked, but the caregivers, what they will tell you and which you believe because you're a child, what I mentioned before about feeling rejection and everything. If that's how you feel, then you're likely to have a bad relationship with men and with money and with authority. So, meaning that the inner child also needed to be healed. That was going to be a very, very key thing if I was going to succeed with employers, with relationships, with money. You can give me so much money, I can earn so much money, and you won't see what I do with it. Even me, I don't understand why I behave the way I behave with it. And it's a spiritual problem, just like addiction and everything is a spiritual problem. So I did rehab. I believe I did it well, except I didn't do my step 4 well. Because I was still afraid of, first of all, I still pretty much in denial about a lot of other things. But also that I was always trying to keep this facade. I imagine I'm protecting my family or whoever by not saying some things. But all families have family secrets, and dysfunction is all over. And this was the opportunity for me to get that sorted out, but I wasn't talking about it. I was pretending to write my inventories, but I wasn't really writing really what the issues are. My fears inventory, I was just writing things like, I fear snakes, not even snakes, I don't fear snakes that much. I fear slugs, I don't fear snakes, but I fear slugs. I fear thieves, I fear, things which everybody would write, but not my real fears. Yeah. Don't want to delve into things like sexual harms, I'm a church girl, I don't have any of those, but if you really read the book, then flirting is, involved there, and those ones I didn't do. So usually you're told if you don't do your step 4 well, then you can expect in 6 months' time to be back. And that's exactly what happened. I was okay. I was sober for some time. I was happy to be sober and back in the real world. One day I got a job, and and the promises are true. Fear of people, economic insecurity will leave you. Before, I always worked for consultants. Now I was a consultant. I got a wonderful conference I was doing, and to cut a long story short, we stayed in a hotel for a whole week, and I managed to keep sober. But on the last day, when there's a party, I told myself, just for today.
Just for today.
Just for today. And that was the beginning of, a bender, which led to another bender. That was around November. By January 23rd, 2007, I was back in rehab. And my counselor told me, Brenda, this scene is too familiar. What scene? You with your blue suitcase, arriving alone in the rehab. I asked him, who did you expect to bring me? Everything taken into consideration. But he was also telling me I'm codependent. The other thing, which I never knew, which I did not fathom, is that I'm a codependent. Because to me, codependent is the other person. Like, I'm an alcoholic, so codependent is my sister and my mother, right? Yeah. And I'm very happy to point fingers at them and label them. But I also am codependent, and I would even say that's my first disease even before addiction. So later on, when he helped me, look, you didn't do step 4. 2, you're too close to this other jama. And whereas, you weren't doing nothing nasty, that kind of compromises your recovery. 3, you didn't do AA meetings. I never did AA meetings until towards the end when it was a bit too late. That's when I finally went to an AA meeting. Again, about image. I don't want to be seen walking into a place called AA by the public, right? Rehab was okay, we were enclosed. But I forget that same public was seeing me going to the Kijiji.
Yeah.
So, when I went there, it took me a while again. I think I just don't follow rules. You're supposed to get a sponsor. I looked at those ladies. I said, no, none of these people can sponsor me. This one I'm afraid of. This one, Siju, is too young. This one. So I stayed without a sponsor for a long time. One day, finally, because 2 other ladies befriended me and they used to insist, we are taking you for tea and everything. And then they would talk about their sponsors. So I decided to have a sponsor so that I can have something to say about my sponsor. My sponsor, when I asked her, would you sponsor me? And she agreed. And I didn't think she'd agree because I just found her so high up there. She gave me a book, Codependent No More. She just said, read this. She didn't say anything more. And I took that book and I read it. And I couldn't put it down until I finished it at 3 in the morning. My story. My childhood stories. My childhood struggles, which nobody could really understand, which I didn't even understand, were written there in black and white. I asked her, are you saying I'm codependent? She said, you are saying you're codependent. Come to Coda. So I started going to Codependents Anonymous. Actually, that's how I put down the drink. Because then the little child, the little girl issues were now being addressed. I was really, Kumbe, I'm not alone. Kumbe, these things are, Kumbe, they're even in the book. Kumbe, they're real life people who can sit there, 15 of us. And what you're talking about is exactly what I've been going through, what I've been thinking, what I've been feeling, what I've been struggling with. And there's a way out. And there's this program. So I have 24 steps, not 12. Not 12 steps, but 24 steps. Later on, I even discovered one that helped me. When I was well along, even in recovery, I stopped drinking for even 10 years. I still discovered I still have problems with money. I have a bad relationship with money. And my sister, who I resented so much, actually really used to shield me, such that it was never apparent that I have a problem. I have a problem with the way I relate with money. So afterwards, I became a compulsive debtor. Mshwari, sijui, I-Pesa, sijui nini, get into all those kind of problems. I borrow from M-Pesa in order to pay. I'm sure I borrow from sure. I get a gig, it can even pay me 80K, but you can find that I still got those loans. Instead of getting savings, now I still got loans. And I came to realize that, Bado, spiritual sickness, the same, you know. So some good friends of mine within the program, within the other 12-step program, helped me to see there's yet another one which specifically deals with debtors, yes, and business debting, and basically why is that still a spiritual problem, and baby steps. How can I get out of this? Even if it's just figures, write it down, write down every single thing that I'm spending, and before I even do that, write it beforehand that this is a spending. This is how much I'm going to spend on saloon and things, and this is how much I'm going to spend on this and this. Put them into categories, and this is how much I'm going to save. You know, back to basics, ABC. They told me it's a mature program, but remember that for me, id, ego, super ego. Id for me is the is very prominent. The child in me is very prominent. So I love this program because it forced me to become an adult. So when I left rehab, just going back kidogo, I did try to run my modeling agency again. I found myself in the same situations of being near alcohol. I wasn't ready to be near alcohol. I was relapsing. So eventually I did away. You know, if your writer is making you sin, cut it off. Yeah. So I did away with that industry. I said, maybe one day I'll come back. But for now, I can't do it anymore. So I had to go back to the drawing board. What do I want to do? And I remember that every time in the rehab, when guardians would come, they would always mistake me for a counselor. And I'd tell them I'm a patient. And they would be, no, you can't be a patient. You don't look like a patient. You're the one who's helping people. And I enjoyed it. I like helping people. And I thought, well, one thing I have, because I was feeling at that point, I have, nurse, I'm 40 what? I was 41. I have nothing, surely. Back to 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. I'm going to live in my parents' house, because by then my sister had moved away. She'd gotten married and moved to Germany. Now I'm going back to live in my parents' house. Huh? You know, you live in your parents' house, you're your parents' baby. I'm in rehab for the third time because it's like being in rehab. Huh? And now the only way forward is I'm going to do this program the way it's supposed to be done. You go to a meeting every single day without fail for 90 days. Whatever else I have to do goes around my going to that meeting. And if I miss today, once or twice I missed, then I made it up. I did 2 meetings somewhere else.
You programmed yourself.
And my mom started to see a change in me. And one day, I remember there was such a loud, terrible bang. And it happened to be that a car had crashed our gate. And on further analysis, it was a bunch of young people. They were drunk. I never found anyone in the car. He was in shock and he got up and just started running. And, I just stood around for a while, but his dad came. So when his dad came and he told me, I don't know, this is the 3rd or 4th car which he's crashed off, he doesn't know what to do. The dad came with a cop. And I said to him, you know what? I think your child has addiction, a drinking problem, and addiction is a disease. So he actually needs help. So when my mom heard me say that, at that time I had been telling her I want to do counseling, I want to study counseling. She said, you've studied a million things and you never stick to one job. So this is just one of the million things. That's what she was telling me before. But when she saw how I handled that situation, she told me, take me to the bank. And what was in my mind is I'm going to be late for AA if I take her to the bank, but let me take her. So I took her to the bank. We came back home. I thought to myself, I'll still make it. She said, come to my room. And she just gave me the money. And she told me, go learn counseling. So that's how I went to SAPTA and I learned addiction counseling. And I went back to Asumbi again as a volunteer first. And eventually they took me as an intern. And then I became a counselor and I went on and did, the higher stages. And I've been working in a rehab setting for 11 years. It's a very fulfilling job when I see people change their lives around. In fact, the moment when ding dong, the program hits, from denial, the denial falls and they see the situation, or they decide, I think I want recovery. I don't want self-destruction anymore. It is so very, very fulfilling. It is not a job where I'm going to drive a Ferrari in this lifetime. It's not a job that pays money, but how you pay, you earn your pay is just helping people change their lives around. And so that's what I've been doing. I love it. I hope one day to own my own rehab. I've made peace with the fact that, some of the things that were troubling me before, that were making me so frustrated, were the fact that my peers, the people who I was in, all of them went abroad. Either they got married, either you were smart and you were able to get a scholarship and go study, or maybe you weren't smart but you had a nice face and you got married and went abroad, or something like that. Me, I'm just stuck here, and I've made peace with that, and sky's the limit. I mean, it's not too late anyway, and it's not everything. Also, I've come to realize, getting feedback from them, and it's nobody's fault. I was blaming everybody, but in rehab, because they give you time to sit in a beautiful garden like this and meditate, and I see my life and I see the opportunities. Who messed them up? Me, not somebody else. I did with my negativity. I did with my cowardice. Now this is where you really need to do your step 4, where you see your defects of character for what they are. I'm a person who is frightened. I'm a coward. Therefore, I blame other people because I don't want to take the responsibility, so that when things go wrong, I have somebody else to blame. I lack faith. I'm a very religious person, but hey, I never knew that I don't have faith, because the opposite of fear is faith. And so I need to work on my spirituality. Religion is there. Spirituality transcends it. Work on my spirituality. And when I have worked on spirituality, I have practiced my religion better also. So this is where I have been for 11 years. And yes, I continue to help addicts. I'm not in a rehab setting at the moment, but I continue to help addicts, and I will always help addicts. And I'm looking for creative ways to do it now.
Wow, what a story. From modeling agency to currently helping addicts voluntarily. Viewers, Brenda has really come through a lot. And these are the stories that we've been telling you, that we'll be sharing in our addiction tunnel. Brenda, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. Hi, I'm Brenda Ochieng. I'm a recovering alcoholic. If you're going through addiction today, I want to tell you there is hope. There is recovery, and there is nothing to be ashamed of. Addiction is actually a disease. If you have a problem, please reach out. The day to get sober is today. You can find me on 0722 646 873. If your loved one has an addiction problem, please reach out also. It is not something that you can do alone. We will work together. We will help you find the way. Call me today, 0722 646 873. Umekaribishwa sana.